So, as many of you know, last year, I think about this time, there was quite a bit of discussion going on in Jackson County about the balanced calendar. And so I was interested in that topic only because it affects my school, or would have affected my school. And the superintendents, I got a few notes I'm just going to read from real quick. So some of the superintendents, they were looking for a way to address like low student achievement and some other problems that they were coalescing around and talking about. And they came up with as an intervention the balanced calendar. And now, ultimately, that discussion was dropped for a number of reasons. But I got interested in it. Let me, where's page down? Here we go. So let me just show you one of the quotes that came up out of MLive. Not a scholarly source, of course, but at least it gives you a sense of the context that people were looking at this as. And they said, these are residents and concerned citizens and that sort of thing. They said, listen, there was a concern raised by residents is that it's their lack of a research on the balanced calendar. Okay, so there's a lot of questions about it. They questioned whether there is proof to suggest it would improve student achievement, and the superintendents had said that they would address this issue. So I was not part of the decision. I was on the outside looking in, and so I didn't really have a dog in the fight, to be frank, but I got really curious about the benefits of the balanced calendar. So I started looking into it. Wrote a white paper on it, did a lot of a lit review, basically, on that topic, and dove into it. So my purpose for the next few minutes is just to share with you what I found, and maybe you got some questions afterwards. We can tee that up and talk about it. If you think about our current calendaring system for schools, K-12, not just in Michigan, but also across the U.S., generally they are from an agrarian or an agricultural context, and ends up somewhere 174, 175 instructional days we might be in school, actually 180 of them, 175 of them with students, September through mid-June, 9, 10 months, 8 to 3, 6, 7 hours a day, hanging out with kids, about 1,100 instructional hours in the classroom on an annual basis. So I like what the superintendents did. They said, listen, we don't have to go with that assumption. We can throw that assumption out and start over. So I thought that was pretty outside the box thinking on their part. Well, let's talk about the suggestion of a balanced calendar, which was what was going around. So I found a number of different definitions. One of them, this seemed to be like the most predominant one, and that's a balanced calendar redistributes the 180 days of the required instructional days. So if that 175, 180 days, it's kind of like spread across 12 months, like peanut butter on bread. Okay, spread it out across a 9.5 to a 10-month calendar. Now, there was a lot of discussion about really, is it year-round school or not? Well, the answer is yes, it is. Because there's a bunch of researchers that say, listen, you can call it anything you want to. It's still called year-round school, modified calendar, balanced calendar. It's all in the same soup, means the same thing, tomato, tomato. So you figure out what you want to call it. One researcher went on to say this. He said, the balanced calendar involves the reorganization. And by the way, can you guys see? I think I'm standing right. Okay. The balanced calendar involves the reorganization of the traditional school calendar so that those long summer vacations are replaced by several smaller breaks spaced throughout the year. Those smaller breaks, by the way, are called intersessions, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, so let's take a look at the exact proposal that was being thrown around. Was a balanced school calendar will more evenly distribute the days students are currently attending school and the days they're on vacation across the year. So definitely we're talking about year-round school. Don't be fooled by it. Modified calendar, balanced calendar, all the same thing. That was the proposal. And that was also my starting point of saying, okay, really what is this concept of year-round school? What are the benefits and that sort of thing? So I say that there are some purported benefits. And I'm not here to entirely put down the idea of a balanced calendar, but it comes with a lot of conditions that I just want to, and that's what my white paper kind of dove into with some of the conditions. So it's not like, it's not like evil sitting up here. It's just there's some things you got to pay attention to if you're going to do it. So there were a number of things mentioned by the superintendents. Addresses the summer melt. Now summer melt is kind of like what it sounds like, kids forgetting things over the summer. I'm sure it doesn't happen here at Spring Arbor University because we have high quality students that show up every year ready to go. It does in K-12 though. create operational efficiencies, stress and burnout of the staff development. They felt that there would be some enhanced opportunities for dual enrollment, intercession opportunities, remediation, and enrichment. I dug a little bit deeper to find out, okay, that's the list of what the superintendent said, but what does research say? And there's a number of things floating out there about the benefits, or the purported benefits of the balanced calendar. These three kind of came to light. Improved student behaviors, less academic loss over the long summer break, and then the improved achievement during those intersessions. So I'm going to take them one at a time and just kind of chunk through them. So intersessions, again, are defined as those educational programs during the vacations for students who want to catch up or even get ahead. So it wasn't just about remediation, it was about for those who want to excel forward. The other thing that came up was, according to the research on the intercession time period, students who are low performers, I was talking about low students who are behind the 8 ball in their class. So those students who are low performers have an opportunity to close the achievement gap throughout the school year. So the idea was they wouldn't have to wait till the summertime to catch up. They could catch up during the school year. Sounds pretty good. But let's talk about the, let me go back here. So intercession. It's really not a universal cure. It's kind of the way I've framed it up here. Delivery of extra academic content to close the educational gap. This is what one researcher said. So this extra academic content was as effective whether it was delivered in school, in the summertime, or during intersessions. So the intercession time period, another person went on to say, this intercession time must target the students who need the help. You can't just design general programs to help people. They have to be very targeted. If you're going to take the time out during the intercession time period, spend the money, it has to be targeted. So in other words, the most important aspect of educational improvement is not when it's delivered, it's that it intentionally targets the neediest of students. Okay, what about that loss of knowledge, that summer melt that was mentioned? Well, any benefit from the balanced calendar comes really with two very strong conditions, and one of them is this. The first condition is this summer melt happens mostly, now not always, but mostly with the lower socioeconomic children who don't have families around them to support them during the summer with continuing their education. So balanced calendar isn't going to help much for middle class and high-end economic families. It's more lower socioeconomic children will benefit from. That's one condition. The second condition is the specific educational programs have to target the needs of those lower socioeconomic students. Okay? Now, if those two conditions are met, then the balanced calendar might have some impact, and that's what the research showed, is might have some impact with two strong conditions. What about student behaviors? A lot of talk about that. Some of the research suggests that student attendance improves, and there are fewer suspensions and that sort of thing. But there's other research that doesn't always come out. Here's the other research. Other research provides an opposing view of that. In 3 different studies, not related at all, different sides of the country, no statistical relationship was found between the use of the balanced calendar and student attendance performance. In other words, the balanced calendar was not, or the use of the balanced calendar was not a predictor of better attendance patterns or suspension patterns. It just doesn't exist. The data's not there to support it. All right, so some cautions then about using the balanced calendar, the year-round school methodology. So first, intercessions are going to will have little impact on struggling students unless those programs are specifically and laser focused. Second, given the weak relationships between the balanced calendar and the academic improvements, school leaders, whether here or other places, they have to be careful to not make promises to parents about scholastic improvements that simply are not backed up with facts. Third, again, given the weak relationship between the balanced calendar and improved attendance, there's much doubt about the balanced calendar actually improving student behaviors like suspensions and that sort of thing. Fourth, teachers use the long summer break to take those professional development. They go to take online classes here, as a matter of fact, and they take online classes other places. They come to school here and other places. So unless there's a coordinated effort, teachers are going to have minimal opportunities to take courses because the proposal was like 6 weeks, I think, was what the summer break was, 6 or 7 weeks. instead of the normal 10 weeks or so. And then finally, fifth, to implement the balanced calendar here in Jackson or any community, really school leaders from multiple districts will need to work collaboratively. Now, we did see that, okay? That was a very positive thing to see. However, it can't just happen today in the short term. It's got to happen from here forward. And we should not assume cooperation is always going to be at the forefront of everybody's mind, especially given school of choice. It's competitive. Make no mistake about it, schools are competing. Okay, so let's talk about values for a second. From a different viewpoint altogether, if you think about the agrarian assumption, it's really about values. You arrive at the conclusion that both family and community values are working together, and they're important when you establish the school's calendar. It's not just somebody putting some dates on a piece of paper. So just as values like farming and community togetherness were important when the agrarian calendar was established, so too our communities have different sets of values. The sets of values in Brooklyn and in Napoleon are different than they are in Concord, than they are at JPS, just for example. So school calendars are intimately tied to our family and our community values. Any program or any intervention for student achievement must be weighed against those values. So when it's all done and said, I think that as a community, we should get to decide how we're going to manage the school calendar. The we is important. Superintendents, teachers, parents, and community leaders need to have a conversation about the real benefits of the balanced calendar, decide if it's worth the sacrifice of family and community values. Okay, questions?
Have there been any studies that have indicated on schools that are in a balanced calendar or year-round calendar? There are a few in there.
Oh yeah, there are. It's, yeah.
That in fact the teachers are suffering because they are lacking in this additional time to meet. I mean, is there a study to prove that?
Yeah, you can find, and the purpose of doing this is you can find both.
Okay.
You can find support for both sides of that. And all we were hearing was one side of it. And so my purpose was to present both sides of it, or to present the other side of it. So yeah, absolutely. My sister worked at Hunt. Loved it. Loved it. I don't know what it did for student achievement, but the teachers liked it because they get breaks through the school year. So somebody asked me what I would do. Go ahead, Rod.
What would you do?
Thank you for asking. Okay. Was that, yes, what you were going to ask, wasn't it?
No, my question's about continuation schools.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wondered if continuation schools, if this can help lower socioeconomic students potentially, if the programs are focused, I wonder if some districts tried it for the continuation school, but not for the main school.
Yeah, so define continuation school, just so I understand.
People who either don't handle regular high school or middle
Like
school terribly.
option schools?
Alternative
Okay.
school, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what they're calling them now.
Yeah, right, yeah. Options, alternative schools, right.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what? There's work out there that says there's probably some benefit to that again for those students. And that's just the thing. There's a lot of research out there on the balanced calendar. Sometimes we only hear one side of it. I think one of the things we need to work on, I think we really ought to abandon the attempt at a balanced calendar, thank you, because our communities are very different even though we're in one county. Western's a lot different than Michigan Center, than Concord, than Springport, than Napoleon, etc. So I think we probably ought to just put our money, and that's strategy number 2, focus on the hours in the classroom and the days in which we execute them. Let's abandon our efforts and resources on looking at the redistribution of the days and focus on the contact, focus on the peanut butter itself, if you will, instead of how it's spread around. Anyways. Okay. Yes, sir.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Like Jim, you had said you're on the outside looking in, being a superintendent of a private school. You were not a part of the decision-making group, right? But you were able to contribute to the conversation, it sounds like. What if the ISD in Jackson decided that they were going to go with a balanced calendar? Would you have conformed, or would you have been tempted to see that as a marketing opportunity for Jackson Christian to offer the alternative?
There's no way we would do it.
You would-
Now, we would not do a balance. No, but we would not for the sake of conformity, but for the sake of services to our students, We would have to make some adjustments to the beginning and end of our school year, and we might have to shift for spring break, for example. You know, so yeah, and we would definitely use it as a marketing opportunity. We might lose families, frankly, but we might gain families too. Yeah, it's a good question. Okay.
So is the conversation met in the county?
What I read you was the last I saw on it.
Okay.
I think they're now talking about a common calendar,
Okay.
beginning end dates, common spring dates, and a lot of that happens sort of anyways right now. So.
Yeah.